Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from the audience at SmithWeekly, including Nick W., Brent S., Jackie A., and Gordon S. We have new guests on the program introducing a new Egypt-focused gold exploration company. Mr. Darin Labrenz, Vice President Exploration, and Mr. Adrian O'Brien, Director of Marketing, are with us, representing Red Sea Resources, a privately held gold exploration junior focused on greenfield exploration in southern Egypt, inland off the coast of the Red Sea, and within the Nubian Shield gold trend that stretches from Ethiopia northwest to Egypt. The company intends to list on a public stock exchange in the future, and you can learn more about the company via its website, redsearesources.com. Darin, Adrian, welcome to the podcast. It's good to talk to you again. Welcome.
Hi, Andrew. Really appreciate you having us on today, and really looking forward to both Darin and I having a chance to tell you about Red Sea and the projects we're developing in Egypt.
Yeah, Darin here. It's great to catch up again. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Adrian, good to chat. Darin, also locally there in Egypt, calling in on this one. Appreciate you coming on to chat with us here. Of course, I know both of you guys well, but I want to refresh the audience here. So why don't we get going with having Darin start off with his background and experience in the junior natural resource sector.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. And again, it's great to be speaking with you again from Marsalam on the coast of the Red Sea. I'm here in Egypt. Really excited about the properties we have, which we'll be discussing in detail here. My background, I'm a geologist. I've been in the industry for over 30 years. Most of my work has been focused on gold exploration, right from the generative side of the exploration industry through to advanced exploration, feasibility studies, and into production. Worked in Canada, the United States, South America, Africa. I think one of the things that, really excites me about our field is the opportunities to do something new and make new discoveries. And certainly that's what encourages me about Egypt is it is, relatively untapped. And I think there's tremendous opportunity in this country to really grow a vibrant mining industry and a vibrant gold industry in particular. So again, really excited to be speaking with you today.
Excellent. That sounds good, Darin. Good to hear from you. And Adrian, just talk about yourself for a moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been in the resource sector, of course, for over 25 years. Worked every level from investor relations all the way up to CEO, and former director of the PDAC. And of course, I've worked with Darin for the last 5 or 6 years on pure gold mining, which was really great opportunity to work together and got to see Darin's talents firsthand. So, very excited to work with him again. And this project for me is super exciting. Chance to be a first mover in a district that really has not ever seen systematic exploration and has just massive potential. So super exciting.
Why don't we move on here with just getting your guys' high-level views of how you look at the gold sector today. Darin, I'd like to start with your thoughts on just the gold sector and how you see it today.
Interesting and challenging time, I think, in the gold sector today. We've seen a fairly prolonged period of a difficult investment market, if you will. So it's challenging to raise funds to move things forward. But, at the same time, I think the demand for metals and by metals, I mean base metals and precious metals is really never been exceeded by the period we're going through right now. So I think in some ways, the market today presents a tremendous opportunity because the gap between investment in exploration and mining and the price of metals and the opportunity for it to advance moving forward is tremendous and continues to grow. So I think there's a massive opportunity in front of us right now, and I think it's a great time to be exploring for new discoveries. And a new discovery is something that I think will really revitalize the industry and bring fresh new eyes into the sector.
Yes, it's a challenging time. I think that's an understatement, Darin, and you're too kind, but sentiment's terrible. This is a great time, I think, for investors to be looking pretty hard at the junior equity sector. And obviously, the best times to be able to get best value out of these from an investor perspective is to come in when sentiment is terrible and everybody tends to have forgotten the gold sector for other shiny objects that they're focused on at this point. Adrian, I'd like to just get your thoughts as well.
This is absolutely the time to be getting into gold. I think there's a couple of areas of interest for me are really gold and copper right now. I think gold is clearly poised for another big move. And in terms of looking at global jurisdictions, people need to be looking at new areas and areas of opportunity, areas that have not been picked over, not been looked at. And, as new discoveries come out and as new companies are active in these new areas, I think that's really going to stoke the excitement around the gold sector again. In addition to what Darin was saying, I think this is a really, really good time to be looking at gold.
So, guys, I want to move on here for the sake of time because we've got some stuff to talk about, but I want to get to the company in a moment. But why don't we get your take on Egypt from the view of first stability, given some of the nearby instability, Sudan to the south and now Niger to the further southwest, and then also just Egypt's position as a growing exploration and mining destination. Darin, you're there in Mar Salam. Why don't you go ahead and take it away first?
As I mentioned in the introduction, I have had the opportunity to work in, many different jurisdictions, including South America and other parts of Africa. And one of the things that struck me when I first came out to Egypt in May of this year was the real sense of safety and security that I get here. It's a very, stable government. People are very friendly. Crime rates are extremely low, and I think that that strong kind of stable government is important from a security perspective, obviously, and it's also important in terms of the ability to work efficiently and move projects forward and have certainty about tenure moving forward. And on that note, Egypt has had in the past a mining law that I would say were rather unfriendly. It dissuaded real investments in Egypt. Complicated ownership laws whereby the government would take or demand an interest in the project itself. You needed a world-class deposit like Centamin Sukari mine to really make it work. That mining law was revisited in 2019, and in 2020 they enacted a change to the mining law that really brought Egypt into a more modern environment with respect to laws, with typical royalties and taxation rates and so forth, that really kind of leveled the playing field with the rest of the world in terms of where you want to put your investment dollar. That was kind of the impetus or the thing that caused momentum in terms of investment in Egypt. The last bid round that Red Sea participated in and was successfully awarded 3 concessions in was also, participated in by seniors such as Centamin as well as Barrick and B2. So you can already see the effects of having a new mining law coming into place in terms of leveling out that playing field again with respect to how the rest of the world operates with respect to exploration and exploitation of the mining licenses. And pair that with a strong, stable government that has been conflict free for a very long time. I think it's a real good jurisdiction in terms of mining investment.
Adrian, anything to add?
No, I think really Darin hit on a lot of key points, and the reality is just simply that when you look at Egypt from the perspective of a junior explorer, there basically is nowhere left in the world to go and look for gold deposits that hasn't been picked apart. You have, one of the last, as we like to say, this is the last greenstone belt in the world that hasn't been systematically explored. The Egyptian government has gone a long way to, rework the mining code, attract foreign investment, and really when you look at the opportunities due to deregulation throughout most of the areas around there. You mentioned, of course, Niger, Sudan to the south. These areas are all seeing just new discoveries because there's opportunity now that didn't exist before. When you look at Egypt, there's now, a reduction in governmental restrictions, and now there's an opportunity to get in there for companies that are lucky enough to actually get licenses, to get blocks of property that are prospective, and to go out and explore using the kind of parts of the world successfully. So, Egypt has all of a sudden become one of the most prospective areas in the world, and certainly one of the most opportune. If you can get into a great project and really look at it through a proper lens, there is massive opportunity here. And you can see that through a lot of the, a lot of the artisanal mining that's taking place. There is a fair bit of artisanal mining throughout Egypt, and of course around the blocks of property that we have, which is great because that certainly serves as a pathfinder to knowing what's there. Some of the prospectivity is definitely shown, but Egypt these blocks are acquired through bid rounds, and only a few companies have been lucky enough to get blocks of ground there. And the only real, I guess, big success story in Egypt is Centamin. They've got it's 11 million ounce Sukari mine, which is a fantastic asset. Of course, they had an offer of 2.5 billion from Endeavor, which they turned down. And when you look at something like that alone, I mean, you have a massive greenstone belt. It's totally underexplored. You have one operating mine that has been super successful. They receive an offer of 2.5 billion and they turn it down. It kind of makes you go, well, what do they think is there, right? Like the upside must be spectacular for them to turn down such an impressive offer. And it just gives you a sense of what's possible in Egypt and what you're seeing and what the prospectivity of the region is. It's a massive opportunity, and the government is, seemingly doing what they can to modernize their outlook on things, modernize processes, and really give companies like ours the opportunity to make significant discoveries, which is going to bring lots of money into the country and turn Egypt into a world-class gold district.
This is an interesting one for sure. And stick with you for just a moment here because you started to go into some of the other stuff I wanted to discuss here. But this particular region, South Egypt, along the coast of the Red Sea, inland slightly, there isn't much activity on the junior side. And as you mentioned, Centamin Sukari is down there in operation, a great mining operation and very close to some of the major standards in terms of tier one. Also that there's majors interested, there's mid-tiers interested in this region, but then also there's not much juniors. When you look at this, there's really, from a new junior perspective, there's not many at all. I mean, it's very, very slim pickings compared to a lot of other regions in the world. And when I looked at this, you just have so limited options, which is compelling from the sense when people start to get interested and attracted to Egypt, which I think they will.
Yes.
There's so few options from the junior exploration standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think you're hitting on exactly the key point there, Andrew. This is an area that has not really been open to exploration previously. There has not been systematic exploration throughout the entire country. And of course, Red Sea has actually 3 big projects, and they span almost the entire distance of Egypt, north to south. So we have one up north near Hurghada. We've got one in the middle near Marsalam, which is actually quite close to Centamin's Sukari mine. Then we have a project right down south near Shalatin. And so, when you look at Egypt, you have to know that most of the population exists close to water, right? So you have population within maybe 10 or 20 kilometers of the Red Sea, and then maybe 10 or 20 kilometers of the Nile, and it could be a little bit more or less than that. But otherwise, you have this massive expanse of ground there's no environmental issues. It's wide open. There's almost no vegetation. There's no cover. I mean, you have all of these really great geological positives, and yet the area is almost untouched. And like I said, it's the kind of the last greenstone belt left in the world that's not really ever been systematically explored. And so from a junior perspective, you only have a couple of different operators in the area. There are maybe 2 or 3 juniors that I can think of that are working. There have not been any big discoveries or new discoveries by a junior to date, no major success, but, some interesting sniffs here and there. Definitely Red Sea is sitting on some really, really prospective ground. And I think Darin will probably talk about some of the discoveries he's made even recently, just in the work he's been doing since joining the team. And I think we're poised to become not just a first mover. We're certainly already a first mover in Egypt, being kind of one of the more aggressive juniors and also with some of the best blocks of property. But from a discovery perspective, I think there's an opportunity here for Red Sea to be seen as kind of the preeminent junior in the area, the group that are making moves and really establishing ourselves as that first mover and jumping ahead of the pack here to show that, we've got great ground and we have something worth developing. And so, it's a limited group of companies to choose from. And really, so far, nobody is setting themselves apart in a big way that that I think if anything really significant is found, this is going to start something really, really exciting, and we're going to be right in the middle of it, or maybe leading the pack if we're lucky enough to do that. And I think Darin's the right guy to be leading the charge on that front.
Yeah, it's absolutely right, and it's tremendous, tremendous opportunity. I think one of the things that struck me when I first visited our three licenses was the some of the things that Adrian's just described. There's virtually nothing living in these areas. There's no vegetation. There is topography, and there's tremendous exposure, and so you're able to see the rocks, and you're able to trace things that have been discovered by artisanal miners fairly easily on surface. So it's an environment that's quite easy to work in, and it's hard to know where to start when I'm talking about the opportunities in terms of the three properties. Each of them, each of these licenses, I think on their own could be something you would build a company around and have bona fide chance at making a real discovery. They all have artisanal workings, active, artisanal mining on them. Each of them have, geologic elements that I want to see in terms of defining a large gold system, be it, large shear systems, strong alteration. We've got complex geology. We're in the right rocks. The Arabian-Nubian belt is known to host tier 1 deposits across it, except for in Egypt, where we find the world-class Centamin Sukari mine. But apart from that, there's nothing else really to talk about. And that's not reflecting the geology. We know when we look at the Arabian-Nubian Shield, which spans the Red Sea and crosses into West Africa, we know that this is an environment that hosts large deposits. The real key here is that the mining law has been a barrier to exploration. And so with a limited bid round and limited number of companies that were successful in being awarded licenses, some of them being majors, as large as Barrick, and very few juniors, I do think, to just reiterate, I do think that we have an opportunity to stand out here as a new junior operating in Egypt in a ground that's virtually untouched, that has tremendous opportunity. You can stand on the ground and just look and see it. And it's an exciting time to be working in this industry, and a great place to be, trying to make a new discovery.
I think the area has been well demonstrated in the sense that the Nubian Shield has been demonstrated. And of course, to the south there, you have formerly Orca Gold, which was taken over, the deposit there in Sudan. So I think with that, and then also just the fact that you're showing, as you said there, Darin, with Barrick, you have mid-tier and major interest in picking up exploration blocks. And so that's also reinforcing as well that you have a number of majors and mid-tiers that have attempted to pick up blocks there, and some have been successful. And then, of course, just for folks to do some work there, there's a few juniors. And I will just mention by name Lotus Gold as another company that's there, that's working in the area. Similar status as Red Sea in some senses. But why don't we come back here just for a moment, Adrian, and give me just a quick overview of the company going back to the concept and then up to where it is today.
Sure. When you look at the group behind this, of course, our CEO is Al Fabro. Al has extensive experience in Africa, probably best known for the discovery of the Yaramoko deposit in Burkina Faso, which was Rox Gold. I think Al has always had a keen interest. One of the other projects we're working on is Midnight Sun, which of course is a copper company focused in Zambia. Egypt is, again, remarkable opportunity. There was a unique situation unfolding where there was a chance to get into Egypt and to start looking at blocks of ground. And so looking back a few years ago, we started a process of analysis, building a team locally to look at the prospectivity, look at opportunities, look at blocks and how this process was going to unfold, and decided to zero in on Egypt with a brand new company, and Red Sea Resources was formed. And so, at this point, we are a private company. We do plan an IPO later in the year, but basically went after 3 blocks of ground. As I mentioned early in the interview here, these blocks are acquired through international bid rounds. So the government gives companies an opportunity to bid and come up with an opportunity here to acquire these key blocks of property. I think between the 3 blocks, we have a total of over 750 square kilometers of ground. So these are massive. I mean, each one of these projects is over 200 square kilometers, or roughly, and Darin can give exact size on that. But, we really looked at these. through research, we made site visits, we interviewed people, and we basically put together a team of international and local Egyptian geoscientists and geologists to go in and make sure that the ground that we were acquiring was ground that we felt to be the most prospective properties that we really felt had an opportunity to be, to be company makers. And at this point, looking at our team, I mean, these are people with lots of big discoveries and mines around the world that they've discovered, and big credits on that side. And that gave us a really great group of people to look at this through different lenses and really make sure that we were getting into property that gave us the best chance. So today, we have these 3 blocks of ground, and we're ready to start moving them forward.
Adrian, just come back for a moment here and just talk about capital structure of the company, the shares outstanding, the cash on hand here, and also just major shareholders, including the management team and board.
For sure. I'll give you the recent financing numbers. We just actually raised around another $1 million at 15 cents. And that money has been allocated to Darin to basically go out and immediately start working on our central block, I believe. Again, he can give you his detailed geological plan and what he wants to do on the exploration side. Basically, prior to this recent financing, around 67 million shares out. We've raised a little over $5 million to date. And most of that is with a couple of groups here in Vancouver. It is pre-IPO, so at this point we are looking to settle on an IPO either early next year or very late this year, most likely early next year. But the company has a tight share structure at this point. We've been very, very diligent about raising just what we need to move this forward. The company's never been heavily marketed, and that makes sense given that it's private. But we are launching a pre-IPO marketing plan now to make people aware of what we're doing and really to prepare ourselves to launch that IPO with the best exposure possible, so that we can really find pricing that we think is fair for the quality of these assets. And as Darin again will explain to you, these assets are looking really, really, really impressive right now. And I think we'll be looking at an IPO at a much higher price than the recent 15-cent financing that we completed.
Darin, I want to get to you in just a moment, but Adrian, just on this capital structure bit, then we'll move on here.
Sure.
Is there potential for investors to participate in any financing at this point, pre-IPO, or will the next round be the IPO round?
We may do another round. I think that will largely depend on Darin's exploration needs. We don't really need a lot from a corporate, G&A end of things. We don't need a lot of money right now. We run this company very lean and mean, and we're keeping it that way going forward. So at this point, really, it's about giving Darin what he needs to do the job that he needs to do. And we'd like to come into this IPO, with some exploration success, hopefully with a discovery. Darin is looking to do some drilling and some early work. He's already been out there working with a team. And we just want to make sure that he has everything he needs to make this thing a success so that we can come out at the highest price on this IPO that we can, really show the shareholders that got behind this early on that we followed through with what our goal was, and to ensure that we come out with an IPO price that really reflects the quality of the assets. And so, right now we've raised again around $1 million, maybe a little bit over $1 million, just closed that a couple of weeks ago. That is pretty well all allocated to Darin to go out and do what he needs to do. And if we do need to raise money, we may do a little bit more here. It probably won't be at 15 cents. It will probably be at a higher price, but there may be an opportunity. And if we don't end up needing any additional capital, we'll push straight to the IPO and come out as high a price as we can.
Darin, let's go back over to you, and I'll take any comments that you want to mention, but let's also talk about the initial exploration project areas, Ra, Luxor, and Oasis Gold exploration projects. Darin, first, why don't you cover where the first focus is for you and those initial plans for drill target generation and how you are selecting those targets?
Yeah, sure. So we are looking to advance each of the 3 licenses with, early stage exploration activities. So, again, I mentioned earlier that there's tremendous exposure on all the licenses across the Eastern Desert in Egypt. So we have, the benefit of being able to look at the rocks and see what we're looking for, and effectively map out the geology, map out structure, map out alteration, and ultimately look to bring some of the targets that we've already defined into better clarity with respect to honing into where we want to spend the real money drilling and looking to make that discovery. When I look at the three project areas, the central block is probably going to see the most of the exploration activity over the next few months. That's our Luxor gold project. It's situated kind of in the center, about 50 plus kilometers from Centamin Sukari mine. It shares geology with that deposit in some ways, be it sitting on a major east-west structure that cuts across the eastern desert. It's got tremendous opportunity. I was frankly quite blown away by some of the targets that we have defined over the last couple of years, including new targets that we defined over the last month as we walked over the ground there. I'll say it's highlighted by a target we call WAM. It sits right in the center of the block. This is a granodiorite intrusive that has a sheeted quartz vein exposure running across it. And what really impresses me here is the scale. It is being actively worked by artisanal mining. It's quite a large operation, to be quite honest, in terms of the number of pits that are occurring in this area. These pits extend up to 30 meters in depth. They're tracing, these sheeted quartz veinlets over a strike length that spans several hundred meters. When you step back and look at the work we've done, we've collected, hundreds of samples across this WAM target. We've seen grades running up to, half meter, 400 grams in individual veins. And again, what really, really strikes me here is the scale of these veins. So it's a whole series of them that run north-south, trending a little bit northwest on the west side and northeast on the east side. We can trace mineralization in grab samples and channel samples that we've taken in active artisanal mining across 2.5 kilometers east-west and better than 2 kilometers to north-south, and it's still open, it's still going. Individually, I've traced these veins across through the granodiorite, across one of these wadis, which is a dried up stream bed, into the northern range front where we transition into a diorite-gabbro complex, and we're still seeing them. They're still carrying forward. So fantastic scale here, high-grade quartz veins. They're sheeted. There's a series of them, and so I think there's a real opportunity to define something that has real scale, if you will, given the and real size potential, given the footprint that we've already developed on the ground. Stepping outside of that, again, still talking about Luxor, the central block. If you move 3 kilometers north of the WAM target area, we're in a little bit different environment. We've got some volcanics and sediments there. I was struck by a new discovery that we made, but in fact was made by artisanal mining. This area that I walked into has tremendous alteration. We've got a strongly altered foliated rock face where they're working that spans probably 5 to 8 meters. They're actively mining a vein there that's smoky gray in color. It's got good texture to it. It's got arsenopyrite. It's got pyrite. There's visible gold, and again, on its own right, it looks tremendously exciting. So, I mean, that's just talking about the central block Luxor. That we'll see, a lot of work over the coming months here, mapping of the WAM target itself, working out the structural context with which these veins were in place, trying to build out the scale, and best define drill targets where we hope to do or we will be doing a fairly small but targeted drill campaign here between now and the next 2 or 3 months to really give some sizzle and hopefully make a discovery in this area prior to our IPO.
Why don't we just stay on this for a moment? Talk about one of the other things the company does have is the company has its own drill rig. I understand that is in country now. Maybe just talk about that, Darin, and just some of the immediate next steps that you guys plan to do at Luxor.
Yeah, so we don't actually have that drill rig in country yet. We're working on the import permit to get it across. So the company does own it. It's sitting in West Vancouver right now. So once we have those permits in place, it'll be a fairly straightforward move to get it across in country. And obviously the benefit of having your own rig is it gives you ideally lower costs, but also gives you that flexibility, the ability to go in and test targets, wait for results, refine your process moving forward, and drill again, such that you're using your exploration money in as efficiently as you can possibly do so. Given the time frame that I think that it'll take to get it across, the initial program will likely be conducted with operators in country here. There are a couple of larger operators with rigs in country ready to go, and so we'll likely be working with one of them for at least the initial program that we'll be doing this year. Again, work programs, we intend to have teams on the ground at Luxor, continuing to take the existing target areas and expand them with our geological knowledge, lots of mapping, structural measurements, rock sampling across the ground, fairly low key, low cost, but critically important in terms of further refining those targets to build up the priorities and rankings in terms of future drilling of these targets should they so merit. We are looking again to drill. This will probably be a program in the order of 1,500 meters initially. I think we have a real opportunity here to make a discovery, just given the scale of what we see on the ground and some of the numbers we pulled out of rock and grab and channel samples through some of the active pits that are on the ground today. So you can look forward to seeing that later in the fall. I haven't really talked about the other two licenses, but if we move north to the raw license, it's geologically complex. There's volcanic sediments and intrusive in a structurally complex setting. Mineralization there is a little bit different. It's polymetallic, so it's gold plus. And by that I mean we have gold with silver, copper, lead, zinc. Sits along a faulted contact between two of these rock units. Grades there, historically are quite astounding. We've had, historic work in 2014-15 included 39 grabs that averaged 15.8 grams per ton gold and 156 grams per ton silver. Channel samples averaged 15.9 grams per ton and 100 grams per ton silver. So you've got some solid results there. There's a broad alteration zone that's 15 to 25 meters. It does carry lower grade gold in the order of 1 to 1.5 grams. So you've got some potential for volume there. And our team over the last year has taken this initial work and has extended the system for plus a kilometer and still open there. So that's quite exciting. If we look to the south end, we've got our closer to the town of Centamin. We have our Oasis license. It's about 45 kilometers west of Centamin, accessible infrastructure here. We haven't chatted about it at all, but it's fantastic in Egypt. There's solid power infrastructure. The road network is absolutely fantastic. So each of these properties are very accessible. Oasis itself is, again, a large block, 344 square kilometers. Regionally, it sits on a very large gold-bearing shear system that runs over 100 kilometers and does bisect the Oasis property. We've got a number of splays off that we've identified. In fact, in early work, we've already laid out over 9 targets on this area. And we've taken grab samples, again, channel samples on there. Of the 270 samples we've taken, over 30% are running better than 1 gram per ton, about 13% running better than 5 grams per ton. So I think you get a sense of some of the opportunity that we see on not just the central block, which will have the bulk of our work over the next few months, but across the 3 licenses that, again, each in their own right have merit and deserve attention with the potential for discovery.
It's quite an interesting setup that you guys have. And of course, you guys mentioned artisanal mining in the area on some of your grounds as well. And the artisanal is a little bit too kind. As I understand it, they're quite sophisticated in some of these areas. But it is quite compelling in terms of what we've got here. And with that, I'd like to just try to get a flavor from you, Darin, and also, of course, for the audience here. But for these types of Nubian Shield style gold deposit, which obviously there's different types of deposits within the Nubian Shield, but talk about, maybe using Sukari potentially as an example, but talk about the grade, the size, infrastructure considerations, specifically water, and just the overall scale, Darin, that you think a deposit needs to have in order to attract mid-tiers and majors.
That's a great question, Andrew. And I think when we speak to each of our licenses, the answer would be a little bit different. Again, I'll start in the central block, Luxor. It is, again, relatively close to Sukari, about 50-kilometer distance. There's a road that runs from Marsa Alam, an asphalt paved highway that runs from there across to the Nile. So we run along there and then turn north into the desert about 20K off the highway. So relatively straightforward from a access perspective. There is excess power available in Egypt, and so if your distance from infrastructure isn't too difficult, you're in good shape from that perspective, and that's certainly the case here. Water is more challenging. When I look at the Sukari mine, they have their own desalination plant, so They're using seawater and desalinating to operate. Certainly, the Luxor targets are well within the range of being able to apply power water for moving the project forward. In terms of scale, I'm not going to fool anyone. I think that you need something that's going to run 1-2 million ounces plus to really generate that interest, to garner interest from the mid-tier and majors, and to have momentum in terms of building a large scale asset and gold field. When we go to the south end, our Oasis property is very close, as I mentioned earlier, to the town of Charlottetown. So, from an infrastructure perspective, it's easy. It's really quite simple. And the environment there's a little bit different. If I look back to, when I was talking about the WAM target at Luxor, we've got this sheeted vein system. Each of these individually run very high grade. But I do look at this as a, bulk mining opportunity, given the scale of what we see at surface and given the frequency or density of these veinlets. I think you can start thinking about bulk mining there. And while you won't achieve some of those astounding high grades, the scale could generate some ounces really quickly. And I think we do have that potential for a plus 2 million ounce deposit at the WAM target in Luxor. At Oasis, it's a little bit different style. You're looking at a large shear system coming through there. As I said, I think there's opportunities for both bulk mining and underground mining. What I like about it is that this regional structure does have some complexity with the splays that we see there, and a lot of our targets are not on the same structure, so they're related. Geologically, they're probably very similar, but at the same time, they're not the same or exactly the same. So I think you can put together a collection of these quite easily that might form a mining center within the Oasis area that is, again, very well connected to infrastructure. Ra's, a little bit more challenging. It sits north of Eastern Desert. It's closer to the city of Hurghada, but it's a little bit further off the coast and off of that infrastructure. And so I think it has to be a little bit more to generate the economics to bring in the infrastructure to move it forward. By a little bit more, I think, a million ounce plus deposit is going to generate some excitement no matter where it is on our licenses. But I'd be looking for something with size and or grade, or, at the raw to move it forward. And again, when I talked about the scale that we see there in terms of strike length and some of the grades that we've got along that system there, I think it's going to be an easy one to move forward from an exploration perspective, and we'll answer those questions fairly straightforward. And I do think that opportunity is there.
Darin, just one other thing here on this. These are generally open pit, conventional, simple processing, about a simple type of mining that you can get, which is obviously helpful. But also just talk about maybe the depths. What kind of depths are we talking about here?
That's something we don't know. I mean, that's a question we have to answer. We've got lots of expression at surface, both from work that we've done, samples that we've taken, the mining activity that is occurring illegally on these properties. So we know that there's gold mineralization there. We know it raw target. We can stretch it for over a kilometer. In the Oasis area, we can stretch some of these individual targets to 500 meters, and it's not hard to link them up into a 1 to 2 kilometer lengths in terms of mineralization along these shear systems. The WAM target at Luxor itself, massive scale at surface, again, spanning 2 to 3 kilometers east-west, 2 to 3 kilometers north-south, centered on a big diorite intrusive. But we haven't been able to drill them yet, so we just don't really know what the depth of these systems is. We do know that there's been pits down to 30-plus meters. I suspect, given the scale of what we see at surface, that we have real potential to develop to depth, so it's going to be the drilling that will answer that for us.
Yeah, very well. There's not a lot of comparisons to pull. I mean, you can certainly look at Sukari as an operation. You could look at maybe a couple other juniors that have projects that have been there. One junior in particular that's been there for quite some time, but different area. You can have a rough idea, but certainly we're going to need drilling to confirm what's happening here. And so looking forward to seeing some of those efforts come out, Darin. Adrian, any comments there? And then also, why don't I link this with any comments you have, Adrian, but also local community work? How are you guys using the local talent, service providers in the country, and then, of course, relations with the local and national governments?
So, I think Darin, has fully covered the realm of what we plan to do on the exploration side and the different projects. I think Raw, Luxor, and Oasis are all super highly prospective, really interesting projects in the right place. Geologically, Darin seems to be seeing what he wants to, and this is exactly his strength, to look at projects like this. And from a geological perspective, it's right up his alley. So we're lucky to have him at the helm as we go and look at these. I'll happily answer those questions as far as community work, government work, working with a team of Egyptian locals. Darin has Egyptian members of his team and geologists that he's going to work with. And maybe I can even bounce that back to Darin to specifically describe who he's going to be working with over there and kind of give you a bit of their background. But it's really important for us from a political perspective to work with the Egyptian government to develop as close a tie as we can and really do things the right way from day one. It's a super unique opportunity, and we want to make sure that we're going into it the right way. And we've built a team of people that have international background, have worked in areas like Egypt previously. Of course, Ian Stalker is one of our directors, founder of K92. We have Gavin Cooper as our COO, and he's senior executive experience. He's a geologist with over 35 years experience, which is certainly helpful. Al Fabro is our president CEO, and of course he has a lot of background in Africa and different international locations. And of course, Darin has worked all over the world as well. And again, with the extensive experience he had with Placer Dome, working throughout South America and Africa, this is right up our team's alley. But we have one fellow in particular that I think is worth mentioning is Ahmed Alashri, and he is one of our directors. He's a dual qualified lawyer in both Canada and Egypt, and he's served with 3 Egyptian prime ministers throughout his career. He was a former policy development manager for Middle East and Africa strategic advisors, and basically he was working as a right-hand man to the Egyptian prime ministers that he served under. So he is very, very, very involved in things in Egypt and well respected and a key member of our team as we move forward and really try to develop those relationships in Egypt, both politically and from a local community perspective, to ensure that we're respecting the Bedouin groups that are local, that we're making sure that we're working under the right rules and regulations, as the Egyptian government also institutes proper guidelines for exploration, because this is such a new thing. This is all a bit of a work in progress, and it's getting better and better all the time. So,
Adrian, that sounds good. I appreciate that. And of course, you guys are early stage, so this will, of course, ramp up as you guys continue exploration efforts. Let's continue here just with a few other things. We'll wrap up. Appreciate your guys' time here. But Adrian, I know you covered this before. We have an idea of what the listing plans are, but just also talk about overall awareness activities to get the word out about this company, because it is early days. What's the plan here over the next few months to get out word to the investor community about this new company that'll be listing soon?
well, it's really important to us at this point. I think that because Egypt has had so little exploration and so little work, this is a perfect time to really raise awareness. I do think we're looking at a great fall in terms of overall markets. I do think that there's potentially some very exciting times ahead from a general market perspective, and certainly from a gold perspective. So we want to plant the seeds now. We want to build a really, really solid awareness of what Red Sea is doing, really build awareness around the opportunity in Egypt, the opportunity to be a first mover, and to really establish ourselves as leaders in Egyptian exploration, and to show our seriousness in the country, to show our seriousness about the projects that we're developing, and to go into this to really establish an exciting narrative around something that I think hasn't happened in a long time. There's a brand new district that is totally underexplored, and we have a chance to really get ahead of the pack here and really set ourselves up for all kinds of success. And so, looking forward to the IPO, what we want to do right now is, as I mentioned, we've allocated Darin the amount of money he needs to ensure that he can properly explore and sort of give us some sense of what these systems hold, so that we can go into the IPO at the best possible price and really, again, protect the share structure that we've been so careful with up until this point. And looking towards the IPO, we've planned to go public sometime either late this year or early 2024. I think it's most likely going to be early 2024, but that remains to be set in stone. And I think at this point, we're not going to talk price, only because we want to see where the market goes and we want to see what kind of success Darin has. And I think that will, I think there's a very high level of confidence, but I think that will really position us to be able to assess the true asset value of what we're looking at here. If we are dealing with a large gold system on any one of the 3 blocks or multiple of the 3 blocks, I think that would establish a much, much higher IPO price than we had initially planned and allow us to really come out swinging with this in the new year.
Well, guys, let's leave it there for now. Thanks again for the time. And I'd like to just wrap up here with for potential investors who are listening in. The company has a private capitalization of about 10.2 million Canadian dollars. Why should investors consider Red Sea Resources at this stage? Darin?
It's geologically, it's a belt of rocks that's known to host world-class deposits. We've got one massive operating mine here in Egypt. It's the Sukari mine with 11 million ounces between production and reserves and resources beyond that. But it's suffered historically from a lack of investment due to archaic mining laws, if you will. Those have been recently revamped. We've got a bid round that Red Sea Resources was successful in obtaining 3 licenses. And this was, the first bid round after the modernization of the mining laws. So we've got, I think, collectively some of the best ground available in the Eastern Desert. To that end, active artisanal mining on all 3 of our licenses, everything geologically you want to see. Again, I've been blown away by the opportunities I see in front of me in terms of the scale of the systems, the alteration, and the gold workings that, frankly, are scattered all over. You can sit back and you can open up a Google Earth image and you can look at pits on there and say, I want to look at this and drill up multiple targets just based on the work that's been done by artisanal activity. You really get a great head start. And so it's a fantastic opportunity from a geological perspective. And I think it's a dream to be working here right now.
Adrian, and your thoughts, and then also let me couple this with the best way for folks to reach out to the company.
Just as far as final thoughts, I think this is a huge opportunity. I think this is a pretty remarkable opportunity for investors to get into something, very early on and be in one of the most prospective areas in the world, very, very early. And, I think this is, for me in my career, probably the most exciting gold project I've been involved with, partly because it's so early stage and just looking at what an incredible opportunity there is here for anybody that is in the country early and, has prospective ground like we do. So, and again, I would really like to throw it back to the team here, Andrew, because to me, it all comes down to the people. At the end of the day, I've worked on a lot of projects in my career, worked with some really dynamic individuals, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the team. It comes down to leadership. Everybody involved here has been very successful in their own right. There's been some huge discoveries within the team on this company. And I think that having Darin on board for me, I have worked with Darin now for over 5 years and really he's fantastic geologist, super excited to be working with him again and to see Darin and Al working side by side. Al's a very dynamic individual as well, really incredible background. And I think when you look at the sum of this team, really got what it takes here to make some serious discoveries and move this forward. And I'm just really glad that Darin is steering this geologically. There's nobody better. So I'm really excited about that. And I think we've got a really great shot. As far as getting in touch with the company, probably the easiest thing is to reach out to me. Always available for anything phone call wise. You can give me a call, you can email me. Best email address to use is O'Brien, that's AOBRIEN, at redsearesources.com, REDSEA resources.com, or you can give me a phone call at 604-809-6890. That's my direct line. We're happy to chat anytime and certainly love to engage with shareholders and to make sure that that we're there for them to answer any questions and keep them abreast of how things are going in the field as Darin goes forward here and hopefully leads us to a great success in the field.
Darin, Adrian, thank you for introducing the company, and we're looking forward to watching progress on this one. Best of luck, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks again for the opportunity to speak with you. It's been a fantastic opportunity here to talk about Red Sea Resources, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew. I really appreciate the opportunity to come back on and speak with you. And I hope you enjoyed the chance to take a look at these new projects in Egypt. Thanks again.